Right. So last week we covered module three, or a portion of module three, belt drives. Right. So today we're going to finish off belt drives. We have one more problem to look at. Right, where um, you have a belt drive that is not 100% efficient. Right, and then we're going to look at the second part of module three, which is conveyor belts. Right, under conveyor belts, we just look at one problem. The one problem should be enough, right? Under conveyor belts, and then we will look at module four. Right, module four is bucket elevators and bucket conveyors. Right, I'll take you through the formulas we use for that module, right? And then look at one problem, right? Again, there, one problem should be enough, right? And then I'll just give you some documents in which you can use. So the documents I'll give to you will have some problems, some tutorials in which you can use to prepare yourselves for the second assessment, right? Uh, Regarding which modules I would include in the second assessment, we'll discuss once the class is done, right? Right. Uh, Without any further ado, let us look at the one problem on belt drives where we consider, let's say losses, or we consider, yeah, let's say losses, right? Right. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay. This is belt drives. Belt drives. Let me say considering slip. All right. Right. Now let's take a look at this problem, right? Hopefully by now you guys have went through the first portion of belt drives, right? Because understanding the first portion is essential in understanding um, the portion of belt drives where we are considering losses, right? Or where we are looking at a belt drive that is not 100% efficient, right? Right, now let's look at this problem and see what we've been given, right? Thickness of a 4-ply leather belt is 14 millimeters, right? So they've given us the thickness of the belt, right? So remember what I said in our last session, right? That if they've given you the thickness of the belt, then that is an indication that you are looking at a flat belt, right? So they've given us thickness here, meaning that we are clearly looking at a flat belt here, right? Uh, so let's write down what we've been given, right? So the thickness of the belt. The thickness of the belt is 14 millimeters, which is 0.14 meters. Number of plies, so they've given us n, small letter n, which we denote as the number of plies. Number of plies is 4, right? And it transmits power from a pulley that is 1.4 meters in diameter, right? So we have the diameter of the pulley to 1.4 meters. The speed of this is 260 revs per minute. So they've given us the pulley's corresponding rotational frequency, which is 260 revs per minute, right? 260 revs per minute. Right. What else have they given us? The angle of wrap, right? Angle of wrap, angle of contact, that's the same thing. That's the angle of wrap, which is our theta, is 170 degrees, right? Now, as you know, our angle of contact, right, or angle of wrap must be in radians, because essentially we are looking at angular motion, right? Because remember, the angle of wrap or angle of contact is the angle that the belt makes as it wraps around the pulley. So the pulley being circular in shape, right, and also running in circular motion, right? Because of that, it means that the angle that we are going to use must be one of angular motion, right? So instead of having the angle of wrap in degrees, we must have it in radians, right? So converting the angle of wrap from degrees to radians, you simply divide by 57.3. Right, so the 170 divided by the 57.3 is 2,967. So now this is in radians, right? Let's see what else they've given us. The coefficient of friction. So that refers to mu. Mu is the coefficient of friction, and that is 0.3, right? Okay, so someone is asking for the link. Don't know why though, because we've been using the same link ever since you started, and the link is pinned. Like it's pinned on our WhatsApp group. Ah, right, sorry about that. Right, so we have the coefficient of friction, and they've given us the density of the material. So that is rho. The rho of the material is 800 kilograms per cubic meters. Take the maximum allowable belt tension. So that is Tmax. Right, Tmax is 7.8 kilonewtons per meter width. Per ply. Well, let me just say per ply. So per n to the negative 1, right? So that is everything that we've been given, right? So now let us look at the calculations, right? Now, if you remember from our last session, I did mention that for these kind of problems, right? If they do not tell you to consider 1 meter width of the belt, then before starting your solution, you have to write that yourself, right? So you simply say, consider 1 meter of belt width, right? And then now you can do your calculations, right? Right. Now the one us 4.1, they want us to calculate the belt speed, right? As you know, belt speed is the V, also known as the circumferential velocity, which is equal to pi dn, right? Now we use pi dn exactly as it is if we haven't been given the thickness of the belt. But if you've been given the thickness of the belt, then to calculate V, right, we say pi times, and instead of the diameter, we use the effective diameter times the rotational frequency of the pulley, right? Now, effective diameter is equal to the diameter of the pulley plus the thickness of the belt times the rotational frequency. Now, the rotational frequency of the pulley is in revs per minute, right? So because we are calculating the belt speed is in meters per second, we have to convert the rotational frequency, right, from revs per minute to revs per second. Hence, you have to divide by 60, right? So now you simply substitute. The diameter of the pulley is 1,4. Thickness of the belt is 0,014 plus rotational frequency is 260. So this will be 260 this divided by 60. And this here should give us the belt speed. So pi times 1,4 plus 0,014 times 260 over 60. Right. So I'm getting here 19,29, 2495. So essentially this will be 25. Right. Always round off to 3 decimal places, right? Because that seems to be the standard for examinations, right? So you better get used to rounding off to 3 decimal places, right? So that you do not forget even for the exam, because you know you guys don't like reading instructions, right? So just in case you miss that instruction, right, the fact that you are used to rounding off to 3 decimal places would actually help you in the exam, right? It won't necessarily count against you, right? Right. So we've calculated the belt speed. Now, with regards to the belt speed, right? If the belt speed is 12 is 12 meters per second or greater than 12 meters per second, then we need to consider centrifugal tension, right? So if your belt speed is 12 meters above or greater than 12 meters above, is 12 meters per second or greater than 12 meters per second, then you need to consider centrifugal tension. Anything less than 12, right, you do not necessarily consider the centrifugal tension, right? So 19,250 is obviously bigger than 12 meters per second. So that means we are going to consider centrifugal tension, right? Now, 5.2, calculate the mass of the belt in kilograms per meter, right? So there is M dash, right? M dash is the mass of the belt per meter length of the belt, right? So you get M dash and you get M dot. M dot would be the mass flow rate, right? We do not necessarily have the mass flow rate here, but we definitely will speak about the mass flow rate when looking at module 4. So what is that? Uh, Bucket elevators and bucket conveyors, right? So for belt drives, they only make use of M dash, which is the mass of the belt per meter length of the belt. Now this will be equal to, so they've given us rho. So the mass of the belt in terms of rho will be rho times the area, essentially, right? So this is equal to rho. Now the area of a flat belt, remember we established that since we've been given thickness, we assume that this is a flat belt, right? Or that is an indication that this is a flat belt. So the area of a flat belt is equal to the width times the thickness of the belt, right? Rho is 800. Remember, we are considering just 1 meter of belt width. The thickness of the belt is 0,014, right? So punching this into your calculators, you should get 11,2 kilograms per meter, right? And that becomes the mass of the belt, right? The centrifugal tension, right, as we've established, because our V is greater than 12 meters per second, right, we are going to consider, or we have to consider, centrifugal tension, right? Now, centrifugal tension is denoted as Tc, and to get Tc, the formula for Tc is m dash times v squared, right? The mass is 11,2, v is 19,250 squared, right? And this should give you your centrifugal tension. And so punching this in your calculators, we get 4150,3 newtons, right? Pretty straightforward, right? 5.4, calculate the tensions, T1 and T2, of course, taking centrifugal tension into account, right? So like I said in our last session, right, that now it is standard that if the velocity or if the speed of the belt is above 12 meters per second, that you consider centrifugal tension, right? They do not necessarily have to even tell you to consider centrifugal tension. This here will tell you to consider centrifugal tension or not, right? However, um, your exams are set by people, right? And people can sometimes ask you to do things that are, I don't know, for lack of a better word, counterintuitive, right? But it is the right to do so, right? So even if the velocity is, say, less than 12 meters per second, of which, if that's the case, you wouldn't consider centrifugal tension. But if you are told to do so, even if this is less than 12 meters per second, if they tell you to consider centrifugal tension, then you must consider centrifugal tension, right? It's counterintuitive, yes, but in the exam, you follow the instruction of the examiner. And if the examiner tells you to consider centrifugal tension, then that is what you do, right? Right, so we are going to calculate T1 and T2, right, taking centrifugal tension into account, right? Now, T1, remember, T1 represents the tight side of the belt, right? And because of that, the tight side of the belt, remember, is the side of the belt that experiences the most tension or the most stress. Right? Hence, T1 is exactly equal to Tmax, or can be expressed in terms of Tmax. Right? Now, if you remember from our givens, we do have Tmax. Right? Tmax is in terms of the width of the belt as well as number of plies. If Tmax is in terms of, so this is 5.4, right? Right, so if Tmax is in terms of the width of the belt as well as the number of plies, then the way you get T1 is by simply saying Tmax times the width times the number of plies, right? It's as simple as that, right? Right. Right. Now Tmax here is 7.8 kilonewtons, right? So this is 7.8 kilonewtons, right? So we are going to convert this to newtons, right? Now we know our answer, whatever answer we get here will be in kilonewtons, right? Multiplied by the width. The width, we are only considering 1 meter of belt width. So this is one. Number of plies is 4, right? So 7.8 times 4 gives us 31.2 kilonewtons, right? Very simple, very straightforward. So we have T1 and we have TC. So now we can calculate T2 using tension ratios, right? Again, we established that this is a flat belt. So we are going to use the tension ratio of a flat belt, taking centrifugal tension into account. So this will be T1 minus TC, right, divided by T2 minus TC is equal to e to the exponent mu theta, right? We have the coefficient of friction, we have the angle of rep, we have TC, and we have T1. So we'll only have one unknown, right? So T1 is 31,2 times 1,000, right? To convert from kilonewtons to newtons, right? To make sure when calculating this one, your tensions are in newtons, right? So this minus our TC, this is the magnitude of TC, right? Divided by T2 minus TC, right, which is this here, is equal to e to the exponent mu, which is 0,3, right? So 0,3, yes, 0,3. And then, so this is 0,3 times 2,967. So theta is 2,967. This is 2,967, right? Right. Right. So now you can solve this mathematically however you wish to do so, right? You don't necessarily have to follow exactly how I do it here, right? So I'm just going to do it the way I'm comfortable with doing it, right? You can do it mathematically. You can do it from this step. You can do it however mathematically comfortable you are comfortable with it, right? Right. So first, I'm going to say the 3,2 times 10 to the 3 minus the 4150,3. So I'm getting here 27049,7 divided by T2 minus 4150,3 is equal to, now the right hand side is e to the exponent 0.3 times 2,967. So this side I'm getting 2,435, right? The angle of rep was 170 degrees. I'm just making sure I have the right angle of rep in radians. 2,967, yes, right? Right, so from here, I'm gonna cross multiply. So I end up with 2,435 into 2 minus 4150,3 is equal to 27049,7, right? And from here, I simply divide both sides by the 2,435, 2,435, 435. So that cancels. So, and then you are left with T2 minus 4150,3 is equal to this here. So this I'll just have exactly as it is, right? And then now I'm going to transpose this to that side. So meaning I'll be left with T2 is equal to, right, this here, right? And then this becomes positive this side. And so this will be positive because we transposed it. So I made a mistake here, right? And then from here I calculate, right? So we have 27049,7 over 2,435, all of this plus 4150,3. So I'm getting here 15,259,006 newtons. Right, 27049,7 divided by 2,435. Yes. So that is what I'm getting. Right. Now, because of how some of you will have calculated this and got an answer and rounded that off to 3 decimal places. Right. Because of that, our answers will be slightly different. Right. But the answers don't matter that much. Right. What matters is following the right thing or doing the right thing mathematically. As long as you do the right thing mathematically, right, whether or not our answers are the same doesn't really matter, right? But you should more or less get something like this, right? So we have T1, T2, and TC, right? So let's look at what they want us to do next. Now, 5.5, right? 5.5, the power transmitted by the drive if the efficiency of the drive is 83%, right? The efficiency of the drive is 83%, right? Right, so the way or the easiest way to attempt such a problem, right? So now they're essentially saying that our belt drive is not 100% efficient, right? The way you use efficiency, or the most efficient way, or the most easiest way, the most simplest way, right, to account for efficiency, right? We are calculating essentially P out, right? Power out, which will be equal to, now the power transmitted is equal to effective tension times the belt speed, right? And the way you use efficiency is by simply multiplying this by the efficiency, right? Because remember, this is this is, what is this? This is power out, right? So this would be the most simplest way of using efficiency, right? To get the power out, right? Effective tension is equal to T1 minus T2 times V times the efficiency, right? I love using this formula like this, right? Because it gives us exactly what they are looking for, right? Instead of taking the approach of having to use the formula for efficiency, right? You might as well just do this here, right? So T1 is 31,2. That's 31,2 times 1,000 minus T2, which you just calculated. It's 15,259,006, right? Times the velocity, which was 19,250, times the efficiency. Now the efficiency of the drive is 83%, which is the same as saying 0,83. So 0,83, right? Now you simply just punch this in your calculator. So you have 31,2 times 10 to the 3 minus 15,259,006 times the 19,25 times the efficiency, which is 0.83, right? So this I will express in terms of kilowatts. This is 254,697 kilowatts, right? Very easy, people. Very, very, very easy. Right? I prefer taking this approach, but you can, of course, take the approach of using the formula for efficiency.
Sorry, sir.
Yes.
In that equation there, sir, don't you have to times it with the number of belts as well?
There's only one belt here.
For the power, there's only one belt.
There's only one belt.
Oh, I thought.
You have
Oh, I thought.
you have 4 number of plies. but there's only one belt.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So if you're
Yeah,
looking
thank
at the
you.
problem where they gave you number of belts, then yes, you would have to do that.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you, sir.
for number of plies and number of belts isn't the same thing, right? A number of plies, it's like it counts towards the thickness of the belt, essentially, right?
Hmm.
Um, how can I explain number of plies? Um, it's like saying how many plies of material makes up the one belt. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. So
100%.
yes. So for now, for number of plies, you do not multiply the formula for power, right? It's only when you've been given the number of belts, or if they want you to calculate number of belts, then only then do you account for number of belts.
All right. Thank you, sir.
So, right. So that is how you would calculate the power being transmitted if the drive is not 100% efficient, right? This is the most simplest way of doing it, right? Right. Now, 5.6, the power transmitted if 5% slip occurs, right? Right. So our belt is 83% efficient. And now on top of that, there is um, a slip occurs, right? So they want you to calculate the power. Let's call this, we are going to call this power P slip, right? Going to call this P slip, right? Now, regarding how to calculate the power if slip occurs, right? And slip is occurring when the drive is already not 100% efficient, right? The easiest way or the simplest way to calculate the power considering slip, right, is you look at the percentage of slip. The percentage of slip is 5%, right? So the power transmitted if 5% slip occurs, right? So the way you calculate the efficiency, right, of the slip if slip occurs is by saying 100% minus the slip efficiency, right? So essentially 100 minus 5 will give us 95%, right? So slip essentially, or because of slip, right, the efficiency based on the slip is 95%, so 0.95, right? Now, we need to take into account that drive was already at 83%. So in calculating the power transmitted at 5% slip, you simply say the power out you calculated, taking efficiency into account times times the efficiency of slip, right? So the power we calculated, right, taking into account the 83% efficiency of the drive is this one here, right? So this is 254,697. This is in kilowatts, so we'll leave it in kilowatts, knowing that whatever answer we get here will be in kilowatts. In terms of efficiency of the slip, which is 95%, right? So 0.95, right? Very simple. So this is 254,697 times 0.95. So I'm getting 241,962 kilowatts, right? And that is the approach you would take in solving a problem where the belt drive system is not 100% efficient, right? Any questions? Any questions? All right, no questions. Wonderful. Right, so I'll be sending this to the group, right, so that you can go through it if you want to watch the video again. As I mentioned, our sessions are now being recorded, right? So once you're done with the session, I'll simply upload it to my YouTube channel, send you the link along with the work that we'll cover during the session, right? So if there are no more questions regarding this, we are done with belt drives. Right? So now we are going to look at conveyor belts. And so now we are going to look at conveyor belts. Conveyor belts. So now we are going to look at conveyor belts. Hmm. Hold on, staff. Conveyor belts. Uh, conveyor belts. Yeah, conveyor belts. Do I have any problems on conveyor belts here? No. Okay, so let me quickly look for a problem on conveyor belts. Mm, Conveyor belts. Mm, nope. Uh, mm, mm, Conveyor belt. One. Nope. Mm-mm. Flat belt. There we go. Mm, so conveyor belt. The distance between is the speed of the 715 to it. Okay, start. Okay, maybe we can use this. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, let's look at the textbooks. Nope. Okay, rails. Conveyor belt. Model. Number of plies. Mm, 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 mm. Something that can have everything. The number of pliers of the belt. Zero retention on this. Okay, we can use this example. I think it touches on everything concerning conveyor belts. Yeah, we can use this. Yeah. Okay. All right. Can everyone see this? All right. All right. So now we're going to look at the last section on module three, right? Which is conveyor belts. Right. The problem I chose touches on, I believe, everything concerning conveyor belts. Right. Right. Now, with conveyor belts, or the conveyor belts you'll be looking at, right, are always um, at an incline, right? Let me put it like that. They're always at an incline, so the loading point, right, is always at an angle to the horizontal, right? Is always at an angle to the horizontal, right, or to the ground, right, and is at some distance to the delivery point, right? So essentially, for conveyor belts, this is what we are going to look at, right? Mm, so let's say you have two pulleys. Yeah, two pulleys, right, connected with a belt, right? Now, if we say, right, we say this is, let's call this the ground, and let's call that the ground, right? So this here is the ground, right? And let's say this here is the center line, right, of this conveyor belt system. So this is making an angle, call this, uh, let's call this angle, let's call it phi, right? So here we are going to have, this here would be the loading point, and that would be the delivery point, right? So LP is loading point, and then DP is delivery point, right? Now, obviously this, the delivery point is at some height from the ground, right? and that height is essential in calculating the power to overcome gravity, right? And then the length of the conveyor belts. Let's see this here. Then for this, the length of the conveyor belt. Let's call this the length. So L stands for length of belt, right? Now, the magnitude of H, or the H, is essential, like I said, in calculating the power to overcome gravity, right? So the H will either be given to you, right, or they will give you the length of the belt as well as the angle of inclination, right? Let's say this here is angle of inclination. Inclination, right? So you're obviously not looking at what is this, angular motion. So the angle will be in degrees, right? The angle you are going to leave in degrees in this case, right? Because essentially we are not looking at angular motion, right? For this angle in particular, right? Now, the height of the delivery point from the ground, they will either give to you or they will give you the length of the belt as well as the angle of inclination. And the way you use that is by using trig ratios, right? If you look at our H here, this essentially forms somewhat of a right angle triangle, right? So this here forms somewhat of a right angle triangle. So in calculating H, if you've been given the length and the angle of inclination, is by using one of the trig ratios, right? Um, Before I get to that, sometimes you are given even this distance. Right? This distance here, essentially the horizontal distance of the delivery point. So that distance, right? So depending on if you've been given the length of the belt or this horizontal distance, right? If you've been given the length of the belt, then take into account that you essentially have a right angle triangle. You look at the H you are looking at is opposite the angle. The length of the belt is essentially the hypotenuse, right? So the convenient trig ratio to use would be sine, because sine, remember, is equal to the side opposite the angle divided by the hypotenuse, right? So to get H, if you've been given L and the angle of inclination would be H is equal to L sine angle of inclination, right? Mm, let's call this, let's just call this a horizontal distance. Horizontal distance. Right, now if you've been given the horizontal distance as well as the angle of inclination, right, again you look at the sides you have and the side you're looking for in conjunction with the angle. The side we're looking for is H, right? It's opposite the angle, and the side we would have would be the horizontal distance, right? So you have a side, looking for the side opposite, the side you have would be adjacent to the angle. So to get H, right, we would then use tan, right? So tan, angle of inclination, tan theta is equal to the side opposite, right, H, so divided by the side adjacent, right? Let me just call this X. Let me just call this X, right? So this divided by X. So to get H, H will be equal to X times tan phi, right? And essentially that's how we look at conveyor belts, right? And then once you get H, either using this or that, right, that H you would use or is essential in calculating the power to overcome gravity, right? Now let's look at what we've been given here. We have a conveyor belt of 500 millimeters width is 95 meters long, right? So they gave us L, 95 meters long, and delivers 150 tons of material. So the L of this is 95 meters, right? And delivers 150 tons of materials per hour, right? Delivers 150 tons of material per hour, right? So the tons, this stands for the mass. So the mass of the material being delivered is in terms of ton per hour, right? Now that is the mass flow rate. So essentially they've given us the mass flow rate, right? Mass flow rate is denoted as m dot. The mass flow rate here is 150 tons of material per hour. So 150 tons per hour, right? So this you have to convert from tons per hour to kilograms, right? Kilograms per second, right? Now, to convert from tons to kilograms, right? You multiply by 1,000, and then to convert from hour to seconds, right? You multiply by what is this? By 3,600. So essentially, this is equal to, right, so 150 tons. Convert that to kilograms, you multiply by 1,000. So times 10 to the 3. This will be in kgs. So remember, they said per hour. So per means divided by. Now to convert from hour to seconds, you multiply by 3,600. Right? See what you get here. So 150 times 10 to the 3 divided by 3,600. Right? Which is 41,667 kilograms per second. Right? So 150 tons per hour is the same as 41,667 kilograms per second, right? Now, another quick way of doing or of converting tons per hour to kilograms per kg is by simply taking this and dividing it by 3,6. So had you said just 150 divided by 3,6, you would essentially get the same thing, right? Right, now let's see what else they've given us. The delivery point is 20 meters higher than the loading point, right? Vertically above, so that is H. So they've given us H here. So H, right? They said that the delivery point, right? So the delivery point is this one, is 20 meters higher than the loading point. right? So there's the loading point. This is 20 meters higher than the loading point, vertically above. So they're looking for, I mean, they've given us H. So H is 20 meters, right? And the belt speed is 85 meters per minute, right? So they've given us V. Now, V, right, has to be in meters per second. So they've given V to us in meters per minute. So minutes to seconds, you multiply by 60. So essentially you have 85. This is in meters. They said per minute. Right now, from minutes to seconds, you multiply by 60. So this will now be in seconds. So essentially, we are saying 85 divided by 60, which is 1,41, essentially 417 meters per second, right? Right. The angle of contact of the belt on the driver pulley is 220 degrees with a coefficient of friction of 0.25, right? The power to overcome friction, the frictional resistance is 25% of the power to lift the load against gravity, right? So they've given us the angle of contact of the belt on the driving pulley is 220. So the angle of contact, as you know by now, right? Angle of contact, theta. Right? The angle of contact has to be in radians. So since they gave us in degrees, you simply take the 220 degrees and divide that by 57,3. So 220 divided by the 57,3. So this is 3,839. 839. And this is in radians, right? With the coefficient of friction, so mu is 0.25, right? The power to overcome friction is 25% of the power to lift the load against gravity, right? So essentially, they've given us the ratio between the power to overcome friction and the power to overcome gravity. So the power to overcome friction, right, is 25% of, so 0.25 of the power to overcome gravity, right? So the power to overcome friction we would denote as P sub mu, and the power to overcome gravity we would denote as P sub G, right? Right, now let's look at calculations. They want us to calculate the power, the motor power if the system is 85% efficient, right? So we have a system here that is not 100% efficient. So in calculating the power to overcome, I mean the motor power. So essentially the motor power is the power in, right? Power out for belt drives is essentially the power being transmitted, right? So that is the power you get in by using the effective tension times, what is this? Effective tension times effective tension times the speed of the belt, right? Right. Now, remember I mentioned that P mu is power to overcome friction, right? This will be in watts or kilowatts. And then PG is power to overcome gravity, also in watts or kilowatts. And then we get essentially power out, right, or the output power. All right, so the output power is also known as power of the head pulley, P sub HP. This is power of the head pulley, right? Or simply output power, right? Just like the other powers, this will be in watts as well. So this will be in watts or kilowatts, right? So if you have the power of the head pulley, then you essentially have the output power, right? Now, the power to overcome friction, right? It is equal to F mu, so the frictional force times the average velocity of the belt, so the belt speed essentially, right? And then PG, right? So PG being the power to overcome friction is equal to m dot times g, the gravitational acceleration, right, times h, right, which is the vertical distance, right, from the loading point to the delivery point, right? And then the power of the head pulley, right? Power of the head pulley, right? So there's two ways you can calculate it, right? The two ways are the one you're already familiar with, right? That is T1 minus T2, so effective tension times V. But you can also calculate the power of the head pulley by using the power to overcome friction and the power to overcome gravity. So this will be equal to P mu plus PG, right? By using these formulas, you will essentially get the same thing, right? So you either use this one or use this one depending on what you've been given, right? Right, and then efficiency, or as far as efficiency, we know efficiency is equal to power out divided by power in. Now, in terms of conveyor belts, right, power out is essentially the power of the head pulley, and power in is the power of the motor. Right, P motor. Right, so these are the formulas you are looking at using here. Right, these are the formulas you are looking at using here. Right. Right. Now let's look at questions. Right. The motor power of the system is okay. So they're looking for the motor power. Right. So now we know in order to get the motor power, right, they've given us the efficiency, so we will need to get the power of the head pulley. Right. And the power of the head pulley we are going to get by using this and that, because that is essentially what we've been given here. Right. So first, let's calculate the power to overcome friction and calculate the power to overcome gravity. Right. So power to, all right. So based on what you've been given, right? Based on what we've been given, we'll be able to calculate the power to overcome gravity. And then the power to overcome friction, we'll simply just use this relationship which they've given us. Remember, they said that the power to overcome friction is 25% of the power to overcome gravity. So essentially, once you have this, you'll be able to get this here. So let's first calculate the power to overcome gravity. Right, so this is number one. Yes. So number one, we first calculate PG, which is equal to m dot times G times H. Right, the mass flow rate which they gave us is 41,667. Okay, this is 41,667. That's kilograms per second. G we take is 9,81. Now the height they said was 20 meters. Now punching this in your calculators, right, we have 41,667 times 9,81 is 20, which is 8175,065 watts. Right. So now that we've calculated the power to overcome gravity, right, we then calculate, or we are now going to be able to calculate the power to overcome friction. Power to overcome friction, they said, is 25%, 0.25 of power to overcome gravity. So essentially, you have 0.25 times 8175,065, right? We have 8175,065 times 0.25. So this is 2043,766 watts, right? What the, okay. This is 41,667. Right? We said 150 divided by 3,6, 41,667. Yes. Right. So we did our substitutions correctly here. Right. Once you have the two powers, you are now going to be able to get the power of the head pulley. Right. To calculate the power of the head pulley, or to save time, you can simply, because remember, to calculate the power of the motor, right, you simply manipulate this equation here. Right. So in manipulating this equation, the power of the motor will be equal to power of the head pulley divided by the efficiency, excuse me, right? So here you can simply say power of the motor is equal to the power of the head pulley divided by the efficiency, right? Power of the head pulley, right, as you know, is equal to power to overcome gravity plus the power to overcome friction, right? So this is equal to P mu plus PG divided by the efficiency. Right, now you simply substitute. So power to overcome gravity, power to overcome friction is 2043,766 plus the power to overcome gravity. Right. Right. Power to overcome gravity is 8179 8175,065. Right. So all of this divided by the efficiency. The efficiency is, did they give us the efficiency? Oh yes, it's 85%. Right, so they also gave us the efficiency, it's 85%. So 85% is the same as 0.85. And this here would give us the power in, right? So this is 2043,766 plus the 8175,065 divided by the efficiency, which is 0.85, right? So I'm having my answer in kilowatts. So this will be 12,022 kilowatts. Right? And that's how, or that is the approach you would take in calculating the power in or power of the motor. Right? Any questions? No questions. Beautiful. Right. Now let's look at how you would calculate belt tensions. Right. This one, I'm sure you are already familiar with. Right. For conveyor belts, we only use flat belts. Right. So for the tension ratio, we are going to use tension ratios or we're going to use tension ratios particular to um, flat belts, right? Because for conveyor belts, we only use flat belts, right? Number two, they want us to calculate belt tensions. So this is referring to T1 and T2, right? So in calculating T1 and T2, right, essentially we have two unknowns, right? So if you have two unknowns require two equations, right? One of which is going to be the tension ratio, and the second one will be of the power transmitted, so the power of the head pulley, right? As you know, power of the head pulley is the same as power out. Power of the head pulley can be expressed in two ways, in terms of effective tension and the belt speed, as well as in terms of the power to overcome gravity and power to overcome friction, right? So this is equal to T1 minus T2, which is the effective tension times V, right? Now the V was given to us, this we calculated, right? So essentially here we have we have this power of the head pulley, right? Power of the head pulley, remember, is equal to this, right? And power of the head pulley will be 2043,766 plus the 8175,065, right? So essentially, power of the head pulley is right 10,218,831 watts is equal to T1 minus T2 into the belt speed, which they gave to us. Right, remember we had to convert this to meters per second, right? So the belt speed in meters per second is equal to this one here, right? We are essentially looking for T1 minus T2. So you divide both sides by the 1,417, right? Obviously that cancels and you're left with T1 minus T2 on the right hand side. So essentially T1 minus T2, right? T1 minus T2 is equal to the 10,218,831, right? Divided by the 1,417. So this is 7211, 596. So this you take as your equation one. And so this you take as your first equation, right? And then now we use tension ratios, taking into account that conveyor belts only uses flat belts. So flat belts, right? You have T1 over T2 is equal to e to the exponent mu theta, right? As you can see, the belt speed is way below 12 meters per second, so we do not consider centrifugal tension, right? So because we're not considering centrifugal tension, our tension ratios for the flat belt becomes this here, right? So T1 over T2, so this remains the same, is equal to e to the exponent mu, I believe, is 0.25. Mu. Where's mu here? Oh, yes. So mu is 0.25, right? And then the angle of rep or angle of contact is this one here, right? So this is our angle of contact, is this one, right? Right, now to get the right-hand side, right? E to the exponent 0.25 times 3,839. So the right-hand side, essentially we have T1 over T2 is equal to the right-hand side, e to the exponent 0.25 times 3,839 is equal to 2,611. Now you cross multiply, therefore meaning T1 will then be equal to 2,611. T2, then now this you take as equation 2, right? So now it's going to be more convenient for us to take equation 2 and substitute it to equation 1, right? So now you sub equation 2 into the first equation, right? Where is the first equation? Oh, there it is, right? So we substitute equation 2 into the first equation, right? Now, equation 2 is T1 minus T2. T1 from the second equation is 0,611 T2, right? So essentially you have 2,611 T2 minus T2 is equal to the 72. So this is equal to this, right? So now in this equation, we only have one unknown. So we solve for the one unknown. 2,611 minus 1 is 1,611. T2 is equal to this here, right? So you're looking for T2, therefore you divide both sides by the 1,611. So that cancels. Hence T2 will be equal to 7211,596 divided by 1,611. So for T2, I'm getting 4476, 472 newtons, right? This is what I'm getting for T2, right? You should be getting more or less the same thing. And then to get T1, right? To get T1, you simply substitute it on either of these equations, right? I prefer using this one, right? So to get T1 will be equal to this here plus T2 plus, so T2 is 4476, 472, right? 7211,596. So I'm getting 11,688,068 newtons, right? So that is what I'm getting for T1 and T2. And that is the approach you would take in solving this kind of problem, right? So had you used had you used this instead, then you would have said 2,611, right? Times T2 is 4476,472, right? Which would give you the same thing, right? Right. Now let's look at the last question. Right, last question is the number of plies in the belt if the allowable tension is 2,5 kilonewtons, right, per ply, right? So now they want us to calculate the number of plies if the belt in the belt if the allowable tension is 2,5 kilonewtons per ply, right? So that is number 3, right? So they said that the allowable tension is 2,5 kilonewtons per ply, right? They said the allowable tension is 2,5 kilonewtons per ply. So essentially here, they've given us Tmax, and it is expressed in terms of number of plies, right? So now, as we know, T1 can be expressed in terms of number of plies, in terms of Tmax. Now, the Tmax here has been given to us in terms of Tmax, right, per ply, so divided by number of plies, right? Right, so now all we do is from this, we solve for n number of plies, right? So in solving for number of plies, you cross multiply, right? So this will be, what is this? N is equal to T max, right, divided by T1, right? Now T max is 2,5 kilonewtons. So this is 2,5 times 10 to the 3 divided by T1, which is 11,688,068, right? So this is 2,5 times 10 to the 3 divided by the 11,688,068, right? And I'm getting 0,2. No, something is off here. Something is way off. Something is way off. Something is way off, way off, way off, way off. Oh, okay. I think I realized my mistake here. I realized my mistake. Someone should have called me out on this, in fact. Right? Remember, we said right, T1 can be expressed in terms of Tmax, right? And if Tmax has been expressed in terms of number of plies, you simply say Tmax, the value of Tmax times the number of plies, right? So here you were supposed to divide this by, divide both sides by Tmax since we're looking for the number of plies, right? Yes. And then to get n will be equal to T1 divided by Tmax. Yes, that was the mistake I made here. So T1 is 11,688,068 divided by Tmax. Tmax is 2,5 kilonewtons. That's 2,5 times 1,000, right? Which gives us, so 11,688,068 divided by 2,5 times 10 to the 3. That gives us 4,675, right? So obviously this is in decimal form, so you have to approximate, right? If the answer is 4 or anything less, if the answer after the comma, right? If the numbers after the comma are 4 or less, right? Then you take the number before the comma exactly as it is, right? But if the number of the comma is 5 or above 5, then you, what is it? What is this thing called? Round off, right, to the next unit. Right, so this would be 4,6. So we say 5 plus, right? So because the number is above 5, the number after the comma is above 5, right? So you round this off to the next unit, right? So number of plies is approximately 5, right? And that is the approach we would take for such a question. Do I have any questions here?
So can I please see the question 3 again? I got kicked out
You got kicked out.
of my network gave me issues, so I had
Oh,
to
okay.
log in again. So I missed that part. 2.5 kilonewtons. All right, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know if you noticed, but I had previously made a mistake here, right? I remember I gave you a formula for this, so you stick with that formula, right? If T1 can be expressed in terms of Tmax, Tmax can be expressed in a number of ways, right? If Tmax has been expressed in terms of number of plies, then this is the approach you take, right? Any more questions, comments, or anything?
So T1 is not necessarily equal to Tmax
It is.
unless stated otherwise.
It will never be stated otherwise. T1 is equal to Tmax. If you've been given Tmax, right, the Tmax you will always equate to T1. It's just that, for instance, here, to get
Yeah.
T1, right, if we calculate, for instance, if we say Tmax is 2,5 kilonewtons, right? If you multiply that by 5, right, you get 12,5, right? Now, had we used this number, had you said 2,5 times 4,675, you see what you get? You get 11,688. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm,
Yes. So it is equal to
okay.
Tmax, but it depends how Tmax has been expressed. Because sometimes Tmax is expressed in terms of um, the maximum allowable stress.
Okay.
Right. So if it's been expressed in terms of the maximum allowable stress, right, to get T1, T1 is equal to Tmax. And then if Tmax is in terms of the maximum allowable stress, then you will say the maximum allowable stress times the area, right? And then the area of a flat belt is width times thickness.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so don't be thrown off by the approximation. Any more questions? Any more questions?
I think we're good. Thank you.
All right. I feel like this was a lot to take in, so we are going to end our session here today, right? I was planning on doing what is this, module 4, right? But the plan now is, but I'll see if the other guys agree to this as well. But my plan is for us to do module 4 on Wednesday, right? So for us to have another session on Wednesday, right? And then we'll have another session on Thursday. Is everyone cool with that? Because this session has been too long. Are we good?
I think we're good. We just need to keep practicing.
Yes. I will be saying there's a document I'll send you with tutorials. So you can go through those tutorials. I will be taking, what is this? Or maybe we'll discuss that on WhatsApp. Saying that I will be posting this on the channel. So if there are no more questions, we can end this session here. Right. I will be posting this session onto the group. I mean, onto my, I'll be uploading it on my YouTube channel, and then I'll be sending the link to that video to the group, along with the PDF format of the work we covered here today. Capish?
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. Okay, have a good rest of your evening.
Same to you, Menier.
You too, thank you.
Right, cheers.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Bye-bye.